Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to these fantastic collective of women that I'm speaking to here, but also hello if you're watching this. I have to say, ever since the 2nd of October, I want to say ever since my latest marathon, which makes me sound like a proper runner, but ever since the London Marathon, just a couple of weeks ago from the time of recording this, I've had so many people reach out. It's been really quite overwhelming. Oh my gosh, Jenny, you're amazing. Like, oh, I'd love to do that. Oh, I think you're bonkers for running the marathon, but good on you. And all of these sorts of comments. And I think the thing that nobody ever recognizes when you take part in a marathon, and I love how somebody said this in a Facebook group, the marathon itself is like your lap of honor, like your victory lap. There's so much that goes into it and behind it that people often don't expect. There's lots of learnings, there's lots of insights, there's lots of myths, there's lots of rubbish, there's all, so many things. So a few days after I ran it, I couldn't think of a better group of people to bring together just to talk about the various journeys. And it just so happens that you're all kick-ass, badass women as well. So I'm so excited to do this, to ask you the questions and to I want to say expose you to my audience, which sounds wrong, but you've all got so many great things that you give and share in life. You're more than the marathon. So I'm just going to kind of jump in. I'm going to get you to introduce yourselves by asking you a question to start off with. So my first question, I guess, which sounds a strange place to say, I feel like a game show host now, like, what's your name? Where are you from? But yeah, my first question really is, can you give us a bit of background about how you got involved in marathon running in the first place? I don't know who wants to go first.
I'll dive.
Oh, good. Oh, Michelle.
You go, Michelle.
So, hi, everyone. My name is Michelle. I marathon running. So I started running about 12 years ago after I had my son. It was an easy thing to do. I loved 5Ks, really enjoyed that. Thought that was all I would ever do. And then started to do 10Ks and thought, yeah, great. And then I found half marathons and I really loved half marathons. And I swore blind. I absolutely swore blind. I would never, ever, ever, ever do a marathon. For years, I said that. And then I had my daughter, Martha, who's now 7, and she was born with a heart condition. She's absolutely fine now. She had surgery when she was 2.5, and so that sent me on a much deeper. Running was like an escape. It was a means to raise money. It became a whole other bigger thing after I had Martha, and through my connections with the hospital where she was born, I was offered a place to run London, having never run a marathon. And I thought, you cannot say no for running London as your first marathon. So I said yes, and I've done 2 more since. Is that right? Yeah. I should have done another one this year, but I got COVID 2 weeks before, so I've got 2 in the diary for next year, which feels a bit scary. But there we go. So having said I'd never, ever, ever do one, I've done 3 and I've got 2 more booked in for my sins. But yeah, that's how I got into it.
I'm sitting here silently thinking, I've said, if I get in the ballot, which I've entered the London ballot for next year, if I get into that, I'm going to run. If not, no problem. And that's it. And now I'm like, I hope I don't become one of those people that's like, so now I've done my 16th marathon. So brilliant. I love that. What about you, Julie? I think you'd said you were going to share now.
Yeah. So I'd been running a little bit, just like 5Ks. I think it was just 5Ks at that point. But I was a very bad runner, just didn't take it very seriously, wasn't part of a running club or anything. But I was working on the Olympics, on the London 2012 Games. And on the day that we were finding out whether London won the Games or not, I said, if London wins the Games, I will run the London Marathon in 2012. And what was really funny is all of my colleagues who worked in the sports team absolutely rolled around laughing. And I was like, what? Like, do you not think it's possible? And so that was like a bee in my bonnet. I was like, right, I'm going to show you. And then, you know, the 2012 came round and I managed to get a place. And, you know, that was marathon number 1. And I've just in June done marathon number 6 in Sierra Leone. So it is so addictive once you've done one, because the buzz is unlike anything else. And, you know, I always say, like, running your first marathon is like having your first baby. You always say, never again. And then, you know, a year goes by and you're like, maybe. And you forget how much it hurts. You know, it's, yeah. That's my story.
That's so funny, how much it hurts. That's a whole nother topic for a whole nother thing. And I love that you ran in Sierra Leone. I definitely want to hear more about that in the course of this conversation. So then, Rachel, what about you?
Wow, they did say that at the start, because this was my first marathon, and they did say it's exactly like having children, where you forget, you say never again, and by the time you finished or the next day you're going to be doing it again. So I grew up with a dad who was a marathon runner, you know, sub 3 hours, and I just thought it was something that someone else would do, you know, other people did. And then I got into running about 4 years ago, and just 5Ks, 10Ks. Michelle, your story is probably quite similar. Did some halves, was great for a marathon. Then COVID hit and the marathon got cancelled. Then I got COVID, got long COVID, got told I would never run again, that I was exercise intolerant, so that was not my kind of journey. Recovered from long COVID, started and then someone offered me the London Marathon as a charity place for children's charity, dear to my heart, and I just thought, I've got to do it. I've got to just say F you. So, and for my friend whose daughter got cancer during the pandemic, but I've also got to just prove point to say that I can do it. And what I realised is how much I missed when I was not exercising, how much I missed it. But yeah, so I did the marathon. It didn't go as planned. I ran too fast. I got too excited for the first half and I had to then walk a bit. But that in itself was also a learning, because then I just stopped and started smelling the roses, started having conversations with people. But when I got to the end, I thought, actually, I'm going to do the ballot by the next day. By the next day, I signed up again. So Jenny, I get it. What's that all about? It's, yeah, beautiful about mass events with people. I love the idea of Sierra Leone. That sounds amazing. I want to hear more about that. So yeah, that's my story. Running it because you can.
It's funny because I love that. I love that. And I definitely think, yeah, running marathons, there's so many learnings. It's like, is it a vision quest? I remember the one that I did, I actually ended up doing it in Stoke in 2020, pounding the pavements on my own. I went through everything, honestly. I was talking to people that had died and all sorts. Honestly, it sounds bonkers, but until you've experienced it, you really get it. I guess I should share my marathon story. So my marathon story starts with me watching the London Marathon on TV as a child and being strangely fascinated by the people that got dehydrated towards the end and would move in funny ways. And I just remember thinking, like, as a kid, and I was really quite young, so, you know, but as a kid I was thinking, gosh, what is that? And they're all running, but I liked the excitement. The thing is, as a child, I was a sprinter. I was athletics, 100, 200 meters. My sister was the long distance runner. So I never, ever, I didn't like cross country running, didn't like long distance running, never wanted to do a marathon, but admired people that did. And then fast forward to later on in life, when I actually moved into London, I live a couple of minutes walk from one of the parts of the marathon route. So I would go and I would watch and I would admire people that did it. I would see the courses they were running for. And in 2019 specifically, Michelle was running the London Marathon, and anyone that remembers, it was the hot one, the really hot one. The sun came out and I remember going to watch her, like having a number on the app and knowing there would be so many people I might not see her pass, but I went anyway. And something really strange happened to me. As I watched from where I was in floods of tears. Honestly, I was kind of like head down, because people would have thought, what's wrong with that lady? You know, it was so emotional watching that. And I thought, this is something I can't do. And because I can't do it, I want to do it. Now, unlike you, I had run one 5K race, I think it was, in Clapham Common many, many years ago, but I'd never entered a 5K, 10K half marathon. I went straight in to a marathon, which goes to show the wacky head of Jenny Kovacs. And the funny thing was, on the 5K that I ran at Clapham Common, I always remember this, my sister was late. She came down to Clapham Common. She's going to hate me for talking about her thing, but she was late. I had started running. She registered, ran, caught up with me, chatted to me, lapped me. In fact, was it a 5K or a 10K? She lapped me and then said, whatever you do, just keep moving. So as I was going up the straight, and I'm sharing this to show you how, quote unquote, good a runner I was. As I was going up the straight, the crowd started going absolutely ballistic, cheering, shouting. And I was like, oh, this is good. And then I heard on the microphone, here he is, 89-year-old big bad Bob. And this 89-year-old overtook me and the crowds were cheering for him. I was like, oh dear, I need to work on my running, but I don't know how, and I don't know that I want to. So that was my only experience of a race. And I can assure you, the 89-year-old that ran on the last marathon definitely beat me, definitely did a better time than me. So that was my running story. So I was never like aspirational, didn't have people around me to run and do all of that. And I want people to know that, because you can go from no way to actually let me have a go. So yeah, so thank you for sharing all of your kind of backgrounds of how you got involved. What would you say is so good about running marathons and the whole process, not just the marathon itself?
Okay. Do you know, one of the things I think particularly for women, I think it's a feminist act, right? And what I mean by that is, because it takes so long to run a marathon and because it takes so long to train for one, you have to be completely selfish. You have to let whoever your loved ones are just take care of themselves. And you have to say, sorry, I'm out for a run. And there's something about making space in your own life for something that you want to do. And yes, it does annoy your loved ones. And, you know, people go, oh God, another marathon, more time out of the family life or whatever. But it also gives you time to work through stuff in your head and to have friendships and goals and so many other things that sometimes get pushed out of our lives as women, because we are such people pleasers. So I feel like it is the ultimate feminist act to run marathons as a woman, particularly as a woman who shouldn't be running marathons. And what I mean by that is that I'm a proud plus size woman, and so to look at me, you would never think that I run marathons. And there's something about sticking your fingers up to people and going, well, you know nothing about me, like go away, you know. And so there's something about challenging beliefs of other people, but also of yourselves. You know, if you can run a marathon, if you can give the time, the effort, and get over all of those mindset barriers, you can do anything. It truly is a metaphor for life. You have to confront yourself when you're training for a marathon and on marathon day, because there's nowhere to escape to. Your brain and your mind and your emotions are with you the whole way. You know, you can try and drown it out with music or podcasts, but you still have to confront yourself. And that's what I love about them.
Oh, I love that you've said that. Oh, she says, dropping her iPod on the floor. Yeah, you do have to confront yourself. And I love that, the ultimate feminist act. Everything, like, I totally agree with, and it's so true. And I'm going to come back to you, especially on the plus size stuff, because I think that's a really important thing. I don't know, Rachel or Michelle, what do you think are good?
Yeah, there's so many different aspects, aren't there? Like, I started running so I could eat more cake, I'll be honest. And then actually, as you as you run more and you start eating more cake, you think, well, actually, if I stop running and I've still got this cake habit, I'm kind of in it now because I like eating cake. So there's that. There's the mental health aspect, actually, of having time out for yourself. I think that's true. And for me, the doing it for charity, was a huge thing, but also selfishly, it meant that I got to connect with people that just came from all walks of life, my entire life, and gave money and sent messages, and I got to then go back and say thanks and how are you, and actually we should meet. And I thought that was beautiful. Then there's the day, and the day doesn't necessarily go to plan, and it's how I didn't think I'd finish at one point. I really didn't. I was dragging myself along, stopping at various physios. And so there's all of that, isn't there, as to how do you pull yourself out when things haven't necessarily gone to plan. And then afterwards dealing, I don't know, I sort of felt like I sort of fell off a cliff then afterwards, and how do you then pick yourself up? So I think you're right, Jenny, it's a journey, isn't it, that's really similar to life, and probably more benefits that you find as we have these conversations as well that you haven't even thought about.
Yeah, I love that. I love what you shared there.
But in one word, cake.
Cake. Mine was pink gin in the lockdown. The first part of the lockdown was fine. The second part, I didn't run it off. I outdrank my running.
Yeah. Connections on the day with other people's causes and why people are running it. I think that's really, really important too.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Michelle?
Well, so is Rachel on the cake, and well, you know, I totally agree with everything that's been said. So yeah, started off with it was a challenge. I wanted to see, like, I really halves, and I try to get to a sub-2 half, which I still haven't done, but it was sort of like a good focus, and the discipline of it I really enjoyed. I'm not particularly disciplined in any other area of my life, but you get a run plan, you get your 16-week training plan or whatever it might be, and it gave my life structure. My husband was super supportive, which is amazing, and as were the kids, to the point of, are you not ready today? Like literally pushing me out the door. So I loved the discipline. I loved seeing what my body could do. In lockdown, I was supposed to do the Snowdon Marathon, and obviously it was cancelled like everything else. So I did it virtually, and in lockdown, I have to admit, it was 6 hours, maybe 7 hours out of the house without the kids. That's like my sole reason for doing it. I was like, I'm going to get 7 hours on my own. Oh my God. It was like utterly brilliant. Like the whole day I was running around Cardiff. I live in Cardiff. Cardiff's not very big. It's quite difficult to do a marathon in Cardiff. I was going everywhere, and people are like, what are you doing? I said, I'm running a virtual marathon. Oh, that's really hard. No, it's not. I'm out of the house and I don't have to talk to anyone. It's fantastic. So that was brilliant in lockdown. Definitely the charity element. It was such a great way to bring people together and raise money. And then more recently, I've gone through going through perimenopause, and it sort of changed things up again for me. I trained for an ultra marathon in lockdown, and all of a sudden everything I'd done in the past didn't feel like it was working anymore. Really struggled with my weight, really struggled with my physical health, and it just kept me, the training kept me focused. I think without it I'd have really I don't know, you just I'm a firm believer that we're designed to move, and if I'm not running, I know I don't get enough movement in my day. I love walking, but it's just not the same, and I think it gave me that reason to move, that time by myself. I don't tend to listen to music or anything when I'm running. It's a real meditative process for me, and especially when I was locked in the house with 2 kids and my husband. Love them dearly, but like everybody else, we need that time. So there's loads of different reasons, and as I've got older, noticing how my body's changing, it's been quite a challenge then to find a way of running that still feels good, and I'm kind of still in that process, I suppose, at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really interesting points that you brought up there. And I often wonder how different it is for men running than for women, with those sort of challenges and things like that as well. But yeah, I love the points that you've all brought up: the cake, perimenopause, the escape from our nearest and dearest, which we do need, and the ultimate Feminist Act. I love all of that. So I want to come back to some of the points that you've talked about. Julie, I'm going to come back to you on 2 things. So the plus size stuff and Sierra Leone. Talk to us about the plus size running and how you've kind of like brought that to
yeah
life.
So 12 years ago, I was working on the Olympics. I was running sporadically, and I went to this race. I did a 10K race. It was run by a running club. I didn't really know anything about them. I just turned up, and it was a 10K, and I finished it in an hour and 18 minutes, which isn't fast, but by race standards isn't slow. And by the time I got to the finish line had been packed up and everyone had gone home. And so I had this moment of first, like, huge embarrassment, like, oh my God, how embarrassing. Then I found it funny. Then I was really angry because I was like, you have a duty of care to make sure that I finished. And so all of that in my head on the way home, I went home and I set up a blog. I set up a blog called The Fat Girl's Guide to Running. And it was an anonymous blog. And I just wrote about my running disasters for about 2 years. And never gave my name, never used photos. And it built up this following. And I would get emails from people saying, oh my God, I didn't know there were other fat runners out there from all over the world. And I get these stories of, you know, I run after night so that no one in my village can see me. And I run in my shed on a treadmill and all of this kind of stuff. And long story short, I got made redundant for my job on the Olympics. I got pregnant, had my daughter Rose, and I was looking for something to kind of occupy my brain and to make some money. So I turned the blog into a business. And so, you know, for the last decade, I've been writing about being a plus size runner. I've run in more than 20 countries. And, you know, I've probably helped 200, 300 women to train for their first marathon, always in the body that they're currently in, right? Because we can get obsessed with, I can only do this when that. And actually, there's no perfect time. There's no perfect body. You've got to work with what you've got now. And yes, you can make changes and you can lose weight and all of those things. But actually, for me, it's always been about being a spectrum. You know, there's no good runners and bad runners. There's no proper runners and non-proper runners. Everything is on a spectrum. And as we get old, as things happen in our lives, we can go from being a 30-minute park runner to a 50-minute park runner, and we can come back again. You know, so there's all this stuff that makes up what running is. And yeah, I didn't ever intend to do more than one marathon. I thought London 2012 would be it. But it was so tied in with being visible and showing people that it was possible. And then there was kind of TV things that happened. The BBC wanted to follow me, and then I did Brighton Marathon, and Channel 4 wanted to follow me, and then I did the New York, and then there was all this media in New York, and like, you know, it becomes a little bit obsessive, a little bit like, oh, look at me, you know, it's exciting. And I love the travel, you know, and being a single parent, it was such a good excuse. Like, oh, you're going to have Rose this weekend. I'm off to Frankfurt, you know, to run a half marathon or whatever the thing was. So it become a tool for me to get what I wanted out of life, whether that was building my business, getting a little bit of recognition, getting time away from my daughter, which sounds terrible, but was actually brilliant. All of those things, you know, but also being a role model for my daughter, you know, showing her that anything is possible. So I did get really obsessed with running marathons. And I had a bucket list at some point, but I've kind of let go of that now. I don't know that I will run another one. Just because my goals in life have changed, and I don't necessarily want to spend 6 hours on a Sunday going out for my long Sunday run, you know. So, you know, and I think that's the point. Our lives as women are never static. And I think that's the difference for men. I think men's lives are a little bit more static than women. You know, with childcare or childbirth, childcare, different stages in our bodies changing. I think we're always having to reevaluate. Is this what I want? Do I have capacity for it? Are there more important things going on? And what I'm finding is, for me to even want to go out for a run, I've got to have some other external factor now. Running by itself isn't enough. So it's always got to be wrapped in something else, like somewhere cool to run, or with somebody new, or for something for charity, or a slightly different concept run. You know, running by itself isn't enough for me now.
And, you know, I love what you said, and this kind of tags back into what you were saying right at the beginning about, and I think we all feel this, marathons aren't just about marathons, like life, business, that there's a real kind of synergy, everything that we do and we have together. And what I love about what you did with the Fat Girl's Guide to Running, I think you're showing people possibility, you're showing them opportunity, you're showing them that they absolutely can. And I think, you know, for many of us, in fact, for all of us on here, we're into developing ourselves, but a lot of people aren't. So I think it's quite easy to skip over that point and think, oh, well, you know, but doing something for yourself and doing something, I would say as big as a marathon, is so huge for many people.
And it's interesting, you asked me about Sierra Leone. I didn't think I'd run another marathon. I was supposed to do the 2020 London Marathon, and of course it got cancelled. And so I did a 5K in my underground car park with my daughter being the marshal and the cheerleader and the drink station, you know, and that was about as much running as I did during lockdown. And then I got COVID in October last year. Yeah, about this time last year, I got COVID and I was really unwell. I found myself in a hospital, 2 a.m., hugely angry that I thought I might die. And I was like, I haven't done enough. I've not done the things that I want to in my life. And I kind of made this promise to myself that if I survived, it was all rather dramatic. If I survived, I would come out and I would do something that made a difference. And I think as business owners, we often think about impact. And sometimes we're like, when I'm rich and famous, I'll set up a foundation and all this stuff. And some of us don't have the time or luxury to do that. So I was like, right, what can I do that will make a difference now? And so that's when I partnered with a charity called Street Child. And I was convinced to go and do the Sierra Leone Marathon, which is labelled as the craziest marathon on the planet because it was 30-degree heat and 90% humidity, right? And even now, I can't even believe that I did it. Like if I didn't have the medal and the photos and all of that, I would, you know, say I was making it up. But it was the hardest thing I've ever done on so many levels. The running was the easiest part of it. Everything else that come up with, you know, having to confront as a white person in an African place, you know, like, and just seeing how the money that's raised helps children. It's a charity that helps children access education. All of those things were so confronting and made me change so many of my opinions on the world. And what a luxury to be able to do that. So many people said, oh God, you're so brave, you're so good for doing that. And I think, no, it's the opposite way round. Like it's an absolute privilege to be able to go and have those experiences in life. And it shows, I took a team of women out there, you know, and I say this in the nicest possible way, really ordinary women, you know, nothing special. And I say the same, I'm not a special person, I'm an ordinary person. And so it's showing that ordinary people can do extraordinary things. And the only thing that the deciding factor is just saying yes to things. It's just saying yes. Like even if you're petrified, even if you don't know if it's possible. None of us knew whether we would get to the finish line in Sierra Leone. And actually at one point I ended up under a bus. I slipped and fell under a bus halfway around the marathon, you know. And so, you know, there were all sorts of crazy things that happened on that trip. But they are life defining. You know, and what, you know, to be able to, when I'm old and unable to probably walk, I'll be like, it's all right. I did the Sierra Leone Marathon once, you know, and yeah, that's the stuff. It's the adventure. It's the not knowing. It's the challenge. It's all of those things. And you don't have to go to Africa for that. You can get that, you know, anywhere in the UK or anywhere that's close to you. You can find the adventure.
Yeah, I love that. When you said, when I'm old and unable to walk, that was me after I crossed the finish line. I had this like crazy idea to meet my man in the pub with my sister. And when I looked from the finishing line, it was 11 minutes away. It took me 90 minutes. I was shuffling. I keep saying to people, think of the paving slabs, 3 shuffles per paving slab. And, you know, I'm not afraid to admit that when I did meet the man, I just went, oh, I just want to go home. Like if he'd been like me, he would have filmed me walking and doing that, but God love him, he didn't. So yeah, so I do get that. I want to dig deeper into some of the I'll do it when because this comes up a lot. I think as you're training, preparing for the marathon, I think there are always elements for all of us where we think we can't. And I know that Rachel had said you know, she had long COVID. She was told, you're not going to run a marathon again. That is on the other end of the stick, isn't it? Of the, I'll do it when I. What kind of things did you push through, Rachel, to just kind of just do it?
So, well, I was told that I had ME, basically, that long COVID had caused ME, and that I could not exercise, and I was exercise intolerant. And I think probably straight after COVID, the amount of running that I then tried to get into very quickly didn't help. But there's a point in the illness where actually the beliefs and the things you're told actually start to contribute to the illness. So if you think that if you walk down the end of your street, you're going to crash, everything about your brain, it becomes a brain and body thing. So I had to get over that, and it took me months of kind of just convincing myself that it was no longer true and I was okay, and I slowly built back up. So but even now, when I get tired, my brain just goes, oh my god, what if it's happening again? And I have to really kind of calm myself down and go, no, you're over that. You know, it's just kind of tired. So there's been a lot of kind of health anxiety since. But it's interesting, Julie, like I've had a lot of people going, I'm not a runner, but I'm running the marathon. It's like, you are a runner if you put your trainers on and go running. It's not about good or bad. You're absolutely run. It's not talking about me recovering. I started blogging. I've been viewed, I think my blog's been viewed by 50,000 people, but the whole point of the story is I am not exceptional. I am just like anybody else. It's just that through NLP and through understanding how the mind body works, I understood what's possible, and it's showing other people that if you've had a diagnosis, if you've been told something's impossible, you don't have to necessarily believe the narratives. Just because everybody's saying something, it doesn't mean that it's true. And therefore, I forget what the question is, Jenny. I'm now on my soapbox.
No, that's
but it is pushing through and pushing through, but in a kind way, to convince yourself as to what's possible, but also being compassionate at the same time, I think, with yourself, that you don't have to do it fast. You know, that I almost missed the kind of point in the first half of my marathon. It's about connecting, isn't it? It's about doing, it's about saying yes. I think that's key, but not accepting other people's narratives, really kind of working out what the real truth is, however hard that is.
I think that's such an important thing, specifically when it comes to marathon running. I remember when I got that email to say you've got through, and I posted it on Facebook, and it was interesting to me how many people who've never even thought about running a marathon, run a marathon, trained for a marathon, had all of this advice to give me. And there's one that's probably not so unspoken in marathon circles. The biggest one, you know, you're going to poo yourself on the marathon in front of everyone, don't you? And
Jenny, I just say there's two types of people. There's those that have run a marathon, those that haven't, and the ones that haven't go, the crowds will get you past. Don't worry about it. The crowds will get you through. And then there's the ones that have run a marathon.
Yes, the ones that tell you, you're nearly there, you've done mile 3, you're nearly there, keep going. I'm like, I'm not bloody well nearly there, there's miles. So Michelle, I want to come to you and talk about your pushing through moments. One of them I felt like I witnessed in the marathon when I got to, I can't remember which mile it was it 23 or something? And I remember I could see Michelle, and she was still running. I could see her running, and I was like, Michelle, and she just looked at me, and I went, Michelle, and bless her, you stopped and came over, and I now know how hard it is to stop when you're in momentum. So I'll never do that again to a marathon.
Oh no, it was amazing. It was so I hit, like, the wall is an interesting thing, I think, as a definition for like athletes. It's one thing when you're running fast, you know, when you're going to run a marathon and you're running fast and you're done in like 2.5 hours or whatever. For us mere mortals, I think the wall is very different, and it can come at pretty much any point. And I didn't realize that. And my psychological wall came at 6 miles. I mean, it was just like, oh my God. Am I gonna get, like, this is crazy, I've still got 6 miles, I've still got 20 miles to go. And I saw my husband and my son, and I was in so much pain. Something's happened to my hip. You know, I'd trained really well for London, probably the best training I've ever done. And I was like, this has never happened, I don't know what to do. I had to get myself through that. You know, seeing them was amazing, and I had to get myself through that. And obviously thinking about my daughter and the other kids that we were helping, I had names tattooed, like temporary tattoos on my arms for babies, some that weren't with us anymore and some that were really poorly. So I was looking at these names on my arms like every mile. That really helped. By the time I saw you, I was like, I've only got 3 miles to go. You can't hit 23 miles. This is like a park run. I'm loving life. However, I hadn't seen anyone I knew, obviously, in London for quite a while. So when I realised, like, you were calling me, like, because there was lots of evidence of people calling Michelle and it wasn't me. But when I realised you were calling me, I was, oh my goodness, it's Jenny. And this emotion through your body, and you hugged me, and I was just like, I just want to stay here. Hug, please. And it was, you know, mentally, I knew I was going to get to the finish, but that hug gave me so joy. I can feel emotional just thinking about it.
I'm already gone.
Those 3 miles were so much better because I'd seen you. You know, it was just, people have no idea how much it's, you know, the crowd really are amazing. And when you realize that somebody you actually know, who actually knows you and who actually cares when you get to the finish, I was like, oh my God, it's just thank you.
Oh, Michelle, I'm going to come back and ask you a bit more about other things that you might have pushed through to get there. But the thing that I want to say is I experienced that in the marathon. A friend of mine, I didn't even know she was going to be there. And I was, at that point, I think I was walking and I was starting to ache. And I looked and I saw her, and I literally, my face, I was just like, I approached her. And then she realised that I had seen her and I knew who she was. And I just lost it. I was in floods of tears. I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy to see you. So I really get that. I really get that there is something. And I was emotional at the start as well. I was really emotional and I couldn't work out why. And I think it was probably my job not to reason why. I think it was a combination of bucket list. There wasn't any doubt, or I don't think I'm going to do this, because in my mind it was like, you know what, worst case scenario, I'll walk it. But a couple of things happened that I don't think people really appreciate. I saw a lady who was running for Parkinson's and had Parkinson's. And she was terrified about the whole marathon journey. And then I saw another lady who was running for a miscarriage charity, which is close to my heart. I ran for SANS, well, not sponsored through them, but I decided to sponsor for SANS. And in that moment, this woman she was with her husband, and she was just like sobbing, racking sobs. She's like, I can't do this. And everyone was like, but you know, you can do it and the crowds will keep you going. And this was in the pen before we'd started. And I remember saying to her, I know some of your journey. And if you think about it, what you've already been through is so much like harder than running a marathon. And it's about, I think, pulling from whatever you've got in your own personal journey, because it's great that people encourage you and give you tidbits, but actually you need to kind of go and pull something out of yourself, don't you? And I remember after saying that to her, she stopped and she was like, thank you for saying that. And then as I was doing the marathon, she was ahead of me anyway, you know? So it was like, great, job done. But you do really have to like really dig deep, I think, to keep going when you hit a wall, you know, when you ache, when you think, oh gosh, like I had a moment where I was eating a Percy pig and it made me feel really suddenly sick. And I was like, no, there's too many people, no. And I swear it was mind over matter that kept me going. But Michelle, what other things? I know you've been through a lot, like a big journey with your daughter and the story. What other things have you pulled from to do a marathon?
Yeah, I think there's a lot in the training. Like on the day, I think obviously there's moments where you've really got to rely on yourself, and depending on which marathon you're doing as well. You know, I mean, London's amazing because there's so much support pretty much all the way around, but I've done other marathons where there's absolutely no one at all, so you can't rely on that. But I think in the training, I definitely remember some of the sort of 18-mile training runs that were so hard and so lonely and pissing with rain, and somebody recommended malt loaf. Like, never eat malt loaf when you're running, ever. I stuck my mouth together because I had saliva and I was keeling over because I had nothing to drink. Ridiculous. But for me, I mean, like, yeah, my time with Martha, I would remember, you know, how I felt when they told us what was happening with her, and then they told us she had a 50% chance of survival. So C-section, I suppose you flashback moments of like what brought me here, and then I could just see her smiling, and she was doing so well. And often when I'm running, certainly when I'm running mass events, I look at other people's, you know, people who maybe they've got something on their back, or like the reason I'm running, and it's such a connective experience, I think, to witness other people's journeys and challenges and triumphs, and that really kept me going. On my the ultra I did in memory of my friend's daughter, who she was only 3 days old when she died, and I mean it was so devastating, as you can imagine. And I remember getting to a point where I think we had maybe 6 miles to go or something. It was a 40-mile ultra, the only ultra I've ever done, by the way. And I felt like I literally had nothing left. It took me 12 hours in total to do it. I literally had nothing left. And I had Luna's photo here, and I was talking to her all the way around, and I was like, right, come on, Luna. Like, we've got to, like, we're just talking to her, you know, and having this moment where you feel connected to something so much bigger than you. I said, like, what, you know, what have you got for me here, babe? Come on, we've got to do this together. And I looked down, and there was some forget-me-nots on the floor, which were the flowers that her mum and dad had chosen for her, you know, when she had her funeral, which was all in lockdown. It's just awful. And in that moment, you're just like, you know, it was huge and profound, and yet so tiny in the moment, that you can draw that inspiration from wherever feels, you know, right for you in that moment, you know, and sobbing and laughing and talking to yourself, and you know, all of those things. So yeah, you really you just get to know yourself at a level that I don't think any other, well, I don't know, because I've not done any other endurance event really, but I think there's something about the monotony of running.
Yeah.
That sort of pavements and feeling your heartbeat, and maybe when you're surrounded by other people, and that kind of the ba-boom, 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 you know, it's you almost like trance-like, and you go somewhere that I can't go anywhere, you know, by doing anything else. So yeah, that's some of my little moments anyway.
Oh, I think we're all resonating with those, you know, the signs, the music. It's so true. When you think, I'm not sure that I can do this, or, you know, I need some sort of support, it's so true. Like, the right music comes on. There was a bit of music I was running, and I shared with some of my friends. It was a Fleetwood Mac tune, and one of my friends that had died just before lockdown, she, in the hospice, she joined this band, and she was singing these Fleetwood Mac songs. And there was this moment where it was like, to not finish isn't an option, and I need to, like, my body needs to keep going for a lot longer than I think it can. And with that, it was like this band were at the side of the route singing. There weren't that many people there, and they were singing the song that, you know, that Karen was singing. And I was just like, it was like a sign. And then the next song I heard was the song that I would ideally like, Lisa Stansfield, if I was walking onto a stage, you know. It's so interesting, the signs, the flowers you see, the feathers you see, the people that, you know, that you see. So we could literally talk about this for hours, but I know we need to wrap up. So in closing, I'm going to ask you all 2 questions. How can people hear more about you, or your blogs or your business or anything else? How can they stay connected with you? And have you got any last kind of things that you want to offer for anyone who's thinking, I might do this, or something else?
Shall I go first? So it's very easy to find my blog. It's Too Fat to Run is the thing to Google, or the Fat Girl's Guide to Running. It will both take you there. I actually wrote a book about marathon running. So if there's anyone that wants to kind of find out more, it's actually 7 years old now. It's called the Fat Girl's Guide to Marathon Running. And I've just done an updated version with the 3 additional marathons that I've run in that time. And that's on Amazon. My advice, God, I've got this really weird sunshine coming through my blinds, which is making me look a bit weird. My advice is to think about marathons and to think about other big things that we want. They're so symbolic of what we desire. And when things feel so desirable and we have so much fear, we should always say yes. That's what I believe. So think about marathons and think about other big things you want to achieve in your life, and just say yes and see where they take you.
Brilliant. I know Michelle's got to go very shortly. So do you want to go next, Michelle? Or...
Yeah, sure. So best place to find me, probably Facebook or Instagram, Dr. Michelle Graham, I think on both. I run a personal development group for women. If that's your floats your boat, come and have a chat. But I share most things on my personal page because that's kind of how I roll. So running, cold water swimming, raising money for neonatal care, it's all there. And I think if you're feeling the call, there's a reason for that. And I think that about anything in life. If you're feeling, and actually if you're like, I can't think of the right word, but if you're not feeling the call, so that I'm not doing a marathon, yeah, you probably will. You just probably will at some point. So I think, yeah, exactly what Julie said. Be open to the opportunities. I mean, I've been in the ballot a lot for London and never got it. And in the end, I got my place because someone else dropped out for the charity that I was running for, and they came to me, and that was like, wow. In the November, so I had to sort of pull my finger out. But yeah, I think knowing what you want, and just like if there's just a flutter of that, there's like I said, there's a reason for it. There's an absolute reason for it, and you'll surprise yourself. You'll surprise yourself along the way, and it's been just the most fascinating, enjoyable, painful, amazing journey that I've done, and I thought I was going to have to stop running this year because I've got problems with my knees, but I don't. Yay! Because the thought of not running that breaks my heart. Absolutely breaks my heart. So yeah, thank you for this, Jenny. It's been awesome, and I'll pass over to Rachel.
You're so welcome. And just to say, if you're watching this and you want some of the links, I'm going to collect all of the links from you wonderful women so that people can get access to your stuff. So yeah. Excellent. Whoops, I think I froze just then. I was saying,
you did, just momentarily.
I was just saying, you'll get all of the links. I'll collect them all from you so people can stay connected as well.
Rachel, with your hands.
Rachel, over to you.
Yeah, so I don't connect any of this with my work. So where to find? Well, 2 things. I ran for Momentum Children's Charity, who did a lot of work with my one of my best friends' 13-year-old daughter when she had a rare form of bone cancer during the pandemic. So everything nice that happened to her, whether it was therapy, whether it was refurbishment at the hospital, whether it was days out messages, all happened because of Momentum Children's Charity. So they do a lot of work with very sick or terminal children. So definitely put that on the link. And I started blogging because I had long COVID. I thought that my life was over. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I used to ring my mum and just go, I want my old life back. How do I have that? And I got a better version of my life back in the end when I worked out how to recover. So I started blogging to share my story with other people. I think it's called Rachel Whitfield's Long COVID Journey. It's on WordPress, but I'll definitely give you a link, Jenny. In terms of advice, it's saying yes is interesting, because I think what you think you're saying yes to, the opportunities then and the learnings aren't necessarily the things that you think I guess that's life generally, isn't it? So it's being open to opportunity. And I really liked, Jenny, the way that you talked about the marathon is one day, isn't it? So it's not, it is about that day, but there is that lap of honour. But actually, when you dig deep and you realise how many other journeys you've had that are potentially significantly harder, there's a whole heap of learning in that as well. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you all for coming. I'm so grateful to you. I am known as the queen of being seen, but not for marathons, I have to say. The thing that I'm now a runner. I keep having to do this. I've got my 2 medals to prove it. The thing that I want to say is that it isn't just about the marathon. There's a whole big piece. And I remember this mentor always used to say before she did an event or something big, a launch, how it would like pull her and stretch her, you know, in so many different ways. And to perhaps like she would go and do something quite big. It could be, I don't know, a bungee jump or walking across hot coals, of which I've not done the bungee jump, hot coals and broken glass. And one of the things that I think in the training, in the preparation to the marathon, you know, I've listened to podcasts, webinars. I stopped listening to music because it didn't quite the voice about saying stop. Doing a marathon or taking part of a marathon is definitely something bigger than you. And it taps into my fundamental belief. You can absolutely do this. Your voice matters, you matter. So if you've got the call, go out there and do it for sure. Ladies, thank you so much for this. I'm so grateful to the nuggets that you've shared. And I will make sure that everyone knows about everything that you want them to know about. And please make sure that, you know, look around this video because you'll see all the links to everything that Rachel, Julie and Michelle do in the world. Thank you for running the marathons. Thank you for raising the money. And do get in contact with them all. That's it for now.
Love you. Thank
you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.
Bye.